Hey everybody, and welcome back to Dude's Brunch, your late night morning talk show where four people talk about four things they found on the internet. I'm your host Taylor Olmstead, and with me this week to talk about his eating history and his search history, it's Tyler Sneezy Panda Reed. Tyler, what did you have for brunch today?
Hey everybody, Catherine and I went to Tom and Chee this morning because they were out of gluten-free snickerdoodles at Coffee Emporium, so we're like, fuck it. We're going to Tom and Chee. So
First world problems.
I got a grilled donut sandwich with peanut butter and banana in it. So
sounds good.
I was hesitant to try it.
You've never had a grilled cheese donut before?
I have not.
They're delicious.
I was like,
I haven't either.
Oh, they're so good. You got to try it. It's amazing.
I wasn't blown away. It was good enough. I don't know if I wanted to pay like almost $6 for it, but that's fine.
It looked heavy on like the creamy stuff that was in it to me. Like too much icing or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not eating a grilled cheese donut for the health benefits. Joining us from his new apartment in Washington D.C., it's Sean Evans. How's the new place, Sean? What'd you have for brunch today?
It's great. My travel to work has gone from like 3 hours to like 10 minutes. It's been actually fantastic. So for brunch this morning, I got up and I decided that I wanted to make pancakes and bacon because I knew I had a bunch of bacon going bad. So just mix a little bit of that, fry a little bit of this, made it and ran out the door so I could get to work on time. But yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Oh, we got hazelnut coffee.
Hazelnut coffee is where it's at.
Gotta get that hazelnut coffee.
Strongly disagree.
I like the aroma better than the flavor.
McScuse me, Tyler. It's not your turn. Our guest this week, we've heard about her a lot, but you've never actually heard her on the podcast. It's Catherine DiMartino. Hey, Catherine.
Hi, boys and girls.
What did you have for brunch today?
Well, clearly I was with Tyler, so I skipped
Sorry.
straight to lunch, and I had a gluten-free half sandwich and a cup of soup at Tom and Chee. It was fine. Good. Yeah. The best place you can eat gluten-free downtown.
Oh, there's nothing like soup for brunch on a hot summer day.
Oh, that's probably how Tyler feels about it.
Can confirm.
Well, as always, we are going to have four things to talk about this week, and you can play along at home using our website, dudesbrunch.wordpress.com/bingo. First person to tweet in a winning bingo board wins a prize. Our first topic this week comes from Sean. Sean, what do you want to talk about?
So this week on the podcast, I want to talk about a song that's been stuck in my head for the past 3 weeks. The new Red Hot Chili Peppers song, Dark Necessities. So I sent everybody the video to check out so we could talk about the video and the song a little bit and see what everybody thought about it. What's everybody's first impressions of this song? Love it? Hate it? Don't care?
Anthony Kiedis looks weirder than ever, and I'm not comfortable with how hip he's trying to be.
As soon as that slap bass came in, I was like, well, I see the Red Hot Chili Peppers haven't done anything different in the last 30 years. I see you're still doing that thing.
I mean, as someone outside of the Red Hot Chili Peppers and or whatever the hell you guys do on this podcast, it was fine.
There we go. An affirmative, a negative, and an I don't care, all in one.
Hater shades.
Man, we just know how to do it right on here.
I'm going to disagree with Tyler, though. I think this is a little bit different than the Red Hot Chili Peppers we're used to. There's a lot of piano on this. It feels a little more subdued, a little more mature. I don't know. It feels a little more polished than I'm used to hearing out of this band, which is kind of nice because I don't think they can make the kind of music they were making in the 90s anymore. And so I'm glad that they recognize that.
The difference between the Red Hot Chili Peppers probably last single and this single is probably pretty similar by comparison to let's just say Thanks for the Memories and Infinity on High. You're like, well, that was quite the change.
Yeah, I mean, Fall Out Boy went through a bigger evolution, but I think nobody was expecting Red Hot Chili Peppers to evolve that much, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they're really good at what they do, and I think that's fine.
I don't want to disagree with Tyler and make it sound like I don't like what he said, because I think that's why I like this song, because it kind of sounds like the Chili Peppers songs that I really, really love. So when I heard the bass line, I was like, I feel like Flea's bass is kind of their trademark in one way or the next. So I was happy to hear that. It kind of would sadden me if they did a whole album where Flea wasn't the bass player. I don't know if this is a band that could survive breaking up and still being called the Red Hot Chili Peppers, even if there was like more than just one new member.
Well, right. I guess more or less I was shocked that, I don't know, I was shocked at how much didn't change. The vocals, it's like he hasn't aged a bit.
Yeah, I mean, he has a stupid mustache now, but...
Well, that doesn't affect
his vocals sound the same, and the drummer looks a little bit older, but otherwise he drums well. Like, Flea looks exactly the same as he always has, and plays exactly the same as he always has. People get old, Tyler. I did
feel like the video, though, was like, look how still attractive these men are. Even, like, let's make them all shirtless for no real reason. I mean...
Oh, they're naked a lot.
I mean, yeah.
I feel like that was probably their creative decision to be like, no, we're gonna look like drug fiends in this abandoned house with no furniture.
I mean, if I was still in that good a shape at that age, I'd probably be like, we're doing this whole video shirtless. Like...
Valid point. Valid point.
Thank you, Catherine. I was waiting for somebody to say that. Like, yeah, if you ran marathons and worked out that much every day, you probably wouldn't want to wear a shirt on your music video, too.
It's hard to look like that. You would want to be shirtless in your videos, too.
But by contrast...
Have you ever seen Flea wear clothes? He looks like a homeless clown. Google her up that one, because he does, though.
We'll put some pictures down in the show notes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Flea, Red Hot Chili Peppers, homeless clown.
Okay, so when you guys watched the video, what'd you think about the so they had the band, of course, but what'd you think about the all the scenes with the girls, with the skater girls? Yeah?
Yeah. That's the best part.
What'd you like about it?
I'm with Catherine. I think the skater girls were awesome. They kicked serious ass.
They were not, like, glorified in a way that's about the fact that they're women. It was like, just like kind of any other kind of skater scene that you would put in a music video, but it was women instead, and that makes it kind of more engaging in a contemporary way.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see them all, like, scuffed up and bleeding in a couple of shots, and, like, you don't see that in music videos much anymore to begin with, let alone with women. And so, yeah, it was really cool to see.
I think it's also just because it felt authentic, because it feels like I've met and I've seen so many people like that just within the last few years that I feel like I know those kinds of people that are like skating and they're really bruised up and they're not really trying to be these feminine ideals. They're just being who they want to be. And so I felt like I think basically what Catherine was trying to say. It felt nice to see an accurate portrayal of any group of
Well, as someone who knows female skaters, the fact that they're represented at all is kind of a big deal. I know that kind of authenticity with the way that they gave them to us is really nice and makes you feel like, hey, look, they put these female skaters in this Red Hot Chili Peppers video and it looks really cool and something that we like, it's not edgy in a bad way. So yeah, I really liked it.
So so I'm gonna have two questions here, kind of a two-parter, and kind of also put out my little theory here too. I think that women skaters were used for two reasons. I really feel like so the song is titled Dark Necessities. And I think when you talk about female skaters and they talk about the female body, that they're, when you see them all bruised up and cut up and they're falling and they got tattoos and they're doing all this stuff, and you think about maybe the song's about the past, about what somebody brings to the table. And I know I watched an interview recently where Flea had just broken up with his girlfriend not too long before they made this song or something like that. So I think they're kind of talking about these these things from the past. And I wanted to know what you guys thought about the fact that Red Hot Chili Peppers are very much a California band. And they're definitely not, they don't shy away from that. What do you guys think about skateboard girls, especially longboard, which is what they mostly have as, does this fit their aesthetic and their music really well?
Man, it is the summer of California. Like, every California band or DJ or act is putting out a record this year, and all of their records are all about California. There's a track on the new DJ Shadow record called California. The new Blink record is called California, and like 4 of the songs are named after cities in California. There's a Red Hot Chili Peppers album out. There's a new Descendents album out this summer. There is so much California rock coming out this summer. It's awesome. And I'm down. Like, I think the longboarding and tattoos and beach culture and all of that, like, I'm glad to see it coming back, and I think it's a nice change of pace. And the Chili Peppers are giving it to us in a way that we're not used to seeing it, It's old dudes and girls on skateboards, but it's still part of the scene. And I think that's really cool. Like, I'm really glad to see that.
I mean, maybe that's where we are with that kind of subculture at this point, where, I mean, we're talking about something that kind of emerged most recently out of the 80s and 90s, right? And then, like, those people are in their 40s, 50s, sometimes 60s in this case, so you are going to see people, like, older people in the scene kind of, like, bringing in, like, female skaters, especially because they're, like, kind of up and coming right now. You're finally starting to see them happen and have their own sort of subculture that's emerging out of that, too. So. Yeah,
the only thing I feel like we're missing with your note on aging is kids. One of the things I was really impressed with on this recent like Blink album cycle is that Mark Hoppus's son and both of Travis Barker's kids get credits on the album with like backing vocals and stuff. And during their encore, Travis's son came out and played the drum set on a song.
Oh.
And like that's a really cool evolution of this like kind of music and this scene that you don't see a lot of places. Like you don't get the family aspect of it, and I think that's really cool.
Right. Obviously, Ozzy's kids aren't performing it.
Yeah, no. Ozzy's kids ain't doing shit.
But that is interesting that there's like almost like a pedigree, almost their like houses, they're kind of like Blink-182 if they have like their children's band. Well, first of all, it's even impressive that they're even still alive to even like to see their kids. It feels like that's been like a problem. I don't know. So it's interesting that we are seeing like almost this family sort of business. I don't know.
Obviously, the Red Hot Chili Peppers kids. I mean, I know Anthony Kiedis doesn't have kids, and I don't think Flea does either.
I don't think any of them have kids.
All right, but I'm pretty sure Anthony Kiedis can't have children after all the drugs he's had. Like, I've read bits and pieces of his autobiography, and it's like kind of terrifying how many substances he abused in the 80s and 90s. So maybe it's a little bit better that it's not a family business for him.
Well, I think family businesses in general are rare for, like, these days when anybody wants to do anything that their parents are doing. And especially in a subculture that's like, fuck your parents sometimes,
All right, so Tyler's got our next topic this week. Educate us, Tyler.
Kubo and the Two Strings came out this Friday. It's a movie that Catherine and I have been excited to see for a pretty long time. We've seen several movies in the theater, and we've seen a preview for it pretty much every single time. We're like, well, we gotta see it. It's coming. And so it's finally here. And so I kind of wanted to talk about it, not so much about the movie itself, because we're the only ones that saw it. Presumptively, I don't actually know. But I want to kind of...
You would be correct, sir.
Right. I want to use this as a sort of like... So if you're not familiar, there's a few ones that this particular company has made. They made Coraline, Paranorman, Boxtrolls. So And so some of those people also worked on like Nightmare Before Christmas. So are any of you guys like familiar with any of them? Do you like those movies? I like them.
I've seen Nightmare Before Christmas a few times. I enjoy it, but I'm not like one of the Nightmare Before Christmas people, if you know what I mean.
That's okay.
I mean, it's just not like my obsession. I've seen bits and pieces of both Paranorman and Coraline, and I was really impressed with them, and I know they did really well during award season, but that's the extent of my knowledge.
So, yeah, I'm going to go with Taylor. I've seen Nightmare Before Christmas probably like 3 or 4 times. I think the cult that's built up around it is a little bit too much for me. In terms of stop animation stuff, I probably like Fantastic Mr. Fox is my favorite. And I think that's because I like Wes Anderson's writing style and I like the way that he produces stuff.
Good choice.
But that said, I still am like, what's the name of the company that makes the Wallce and Grommit stuff? And they made Chicken Run and they made all this other stuff in terms of stop motion.
Shoot.
To the Googler.
Oh, you just...
Because, I mean, I'm familiar with that, and I grew up with that kind of stuff, and I've liked stop.
Animation.
Yeah, like stop motion animation stuff. I haven't watched Boxtrolls or anything yet, and I don't know why. After I watched the preview for it, now I'm going to go find it on Netflix, but I don't know. I like that kind of stuff, so I was excited to talk about this topic.
Yes. I'm asking you, do you like stop-motion movies?
Oh, well, of course I do. I mean, I was a big fan. I'm still a big fan of Nightmare Before Christmas. And Vincent, which was Tim Burton's kind of premiere stop-motion film. And I've seen Coraline. I was kind of whatever about it. Paranorman I liked. And that was the first film to really use, like, 3D printing as, like, the new stop-motion media. And I didn't see Boxtrolls because it has, like, a transphobic joke in it. So.
Oh, and James and the Giant Peach.
Oh, my God, James and the Giant Peach, that's right.
I forgot about that. That movie's so good.
Yeah, I forgot about that, too.
Well, and I felt like for this, it's important to be like, what about all those Christmas movies that are stop motion, too, by the Rankin Bass group? Like, if you like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer stop motion, you know, I like
things
that.
like The Year Without a Santa Claus and all that stuff.
And I love Wallce and Grommit, too. That's really hard because it's all clay.
And I remember as a little kid, like, being over the moon about Gumby. And I had, like, Gumby action figures and stuff. And watching it back, Gumby is fucking weird, man.
Yes, it is.
That shit is so surrealist.
They, like, go inside of stuff all the time and, like, turn into stuff and...
Yeah, it's strange.
Stuff comes to life. It's not, like, normal.
Well, I would actually say, I don't know if I mean, obviously I think Nightmare Before Christmas is a fine movie. I think James Giant Peach is a fine movie,
So
but like all those like the other movies that this company has produced, which is Laika, which if I didn't say that out loud, but they've all seemed very weird. Like they're just like everyone looks weird, everything feels weird. It's like a very like I don't know, it's a little creepy a little bit, which I think was definitely the point because they were probably still like appealing to like that sort of like Nightmare Before Christmas audience, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. But like specifically like Kubo feels like it's a movie that they're like, what if we make a movie that wasn't fucking weird? Like, what if we just made like an action movie? And I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'm interested now.
I think Kubo is interesting because it has the most like traditionally human-looking characters out of everything they've done. Because like there were points.
I think they're traditionally stylized.
Yeah, traditionally stylized is a better way to say it. But when you look at some of these shots, like they wouldn't be hard to reproduce with actors, which is what makes it so impressive that they're doing it with stop motion. Because a movie like Coraline, like the character design is so intense that you could never actually shoot it with people. But Kubo looks like a human and could have been a human actor. And instead, they're like fully articulating a puppet, which is just astounding.
Obviously, I provided a video for everyone to take a look at, and it'll probably be available in the notes. But, like, a lot of work obviously went into this movie. Like, all stop-motion movies typically require a lot of work. Typically, also animation by itself does, but stop-motion more kind of seems like more, because they have to craft the thing then move the thing. So there's a lot of like moving parts, and specifically in this movie, considering they tried to make as many practical effects as possible, and so I was just kind of wondering, like, how does that affect your like potential to enjoy it? Because obviously you haven't seen it, but like, does knowing something took a long time and like kind of knowing the process of the movie, does that make it like sort of like more inherently valuable? Because like there could, for example, like I haven't seen Avatar, but obviously at the time Avatar was like, oh, this is the greatest, this is a really great like cinematic experience. But like apparently the movie, like the plot was like pretty thin, but people like liked it because it was a spectacle.
Saying the plot of Avatar is thin is the world's biggest understatement.
Well,
I feel like that's not really a fair assessment. But
It's Dances with Wolves in Space.
Oh,
sure.
I'm not gonna let you insult Dances with Wolves like that.
Oh, shots fired.
Yeah.
I think the amount of time that's put into something shouldn't impact necessarily the way that we like view it and think about it, but it obviously does. And sometimes like that's for better and sometimes it's for worse. I'm thinking of things like Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark or Chinese Democracy as bad examples of like, we know that the production was fraught with like 20 years of legal issues and then it turns out to be shitty and we hate it even more. But a really good example that came out in the past year that I think had all the right things working for it is a movie called Tangerine. Are you guys familiar with this?
No. I've heard of it. But...
So Tangerine is on Netflix. I have watched part of it. I haven't finished it. It is a movie about two trans women in Los Angeles, and it's shot with trans actors, and the entire thing was filmed on iPhones. And so it has this like trifecta of things of like a movie that could really only have been made in 2015 on like a shoestring budget in like some ridiculously short amount of shooting time. I don't remember how long it took. And the whole thing is shot on phones using experimental lenses and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's just like that alone got me excited about the movie. And then what I've watched of it is like interesting as well. And so, yeah, I think it definitely impacts the way that I watch it.
I feel like stop motion movies are kind of timeless in that the process that makes them is its own thing. Like, I don't feel like they'll ever be caught as like, oh, that was so 2015 or 2000 or blank, because we'll look back and say like, look at how like Catherine was saying, like, which one was it? Which one was the first one made that had 3D models or 3D printed?
Oh, Paranorman was well known for it, yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, I think we'll look back and say like, wow, Rudolph started out with like a felted clay model, or Gumby was literally just like gum paste. And now, like you'll get to see the evolution of, you could do this whole thing of evolution of stop motion cinema. And I think it would be really cool, like, I think they'll be more categorized as being their own thing than being like lacking something or being dated for something.
I do think we're getting to a point now where 3D or like 3D stop motion animated films are more legitimate than traditional animated films, because that's been like an ongoing controversy in like awards or whatever for films, is that they don't even watch most of the animated entries, or they're like just not considered as good. They're not considered as good as like the rest of the films. So I feel like stop motion reaches more of a legitimacy quicker for those kinds of people, because it's really laborious and because like all of those decisions have to be really careful, or you're wasting time and money every time. Like, I forget how ridiculous it was to work on Nightmare Before Christmas, but it's like you might get 3 seconds of footage on some days. And sometimes someone will knock over the models and, I guess today's a wash because we have to reset, and we've gotten better technology to kind of deal with that kind of stuff. But as an artist, these feel like two separate things. Like, the labor that goes into something can be of value, which we talked about a second ago, and then also the film itself can be something that is of value a different way. Mm-hmm. Like the process for Paranorman and for Kubo is very valuable because it teaches us how to make stop motion quicker and better and more realistic or more stylized or illustrated or whatever. But also filmmaking is still a thing, and that's always in development too, a different way.
Well, and you brought up an interesting point of, like, I don't know how to describe it. I guess, like, people making selections for awards and the people who, like, determine artistic value, like, in the critical sense. I don't want to say specifically critics because all critics have different opinions, but, like, you know, the Academy and people like that, they care more about stop motion, and I think we're seeing the same thing with practical effects right now, where movies shot with practical effects are getting way better treatment than movies that are heavy on CGI. But 10 years ago, that wasn't the case, you know? I know Sean's going to hate this example, but you look at the Star Wars prequels, and everybody was so excited at their groundbreaking use of CG, but all of that stuff didn't age very well. And so now they're shooting all the new Star Wars with practical effects.
Right. And
it's become an even bigger deal than when they were shooting it with CG. Like, I think it's kind of an ebb and flow of the medium in a way.
I think that's an interesting point about that, the digital, like the CGI effects, there's some kind of like wave effect happening where CGI makes a lot of progress, and then for us it's like indistinguishable from real life for a while, and then we're like, that doesn't look real, so we switch to practical effects again because we have the technology to make that work through animatronics and the combination of CGI and paint overs and stuff like that. And then we start like, okay, maybe we can progress again in CGI to a point where it's indistinguishable from reality, which is, you know, we start kind of making those progress parallel, but you don't see them executed in film because it's so expensive. Like, both of those directions are so expensive. And now CGI is really cheap, but it still doesn't look as good. So we have to overlay it on top of practical effects, like what they did for The Thing movies.
This company's made some, like, weird-ass movies, and it seems like they went with a little bit more of a traditional story this time around. Does that make it any more interesting to you? Are you inclined to go see this movie or rent it at your local Blockbuster? Get a VHS tape of this at some point.
I can say that people in my office have been really excited to bring their kids to this movie, which I did not hear about movies like Paranorman and Coraline, and so I think it definitely has that going for it. And the toys are like flying off the shelves.
They're toys?
They're toys?
Yeah.
Wow, you guys don't know this? You guys are like hashtag toy correspondents.
That Burger King.
I was surprised there were kids in the theater, but...
God, they were annoying.
But it wasn't like packed with kids.
I feel like people aren't generally receptive to stop motion movies.
So interesting.
Regardless of how weird the characters are, you just think people aren't into it?
Yeah. I think there's a stigma that's built up around cartoons and claymation is childish and stuff. Why would you want to go see that when you can watch Arnold Schwarzenegger punch something out of Punch in Time or something?
Yeah, guys, there's a new Jason Bourne movie out.
Yeah, it's just okay,
like all the other Jason Bourne movies.
Rehash the dead franchises that have already been, going on for years.
I think it has more to do with the perceived objectivity of art, and that this really hit me home as we were walking back from Tom and Chee. There was some people on a Segway tour, which is the widest thing I've ever heard in my life. And so this guy was like, and over here we have the Kroger mural, and it's like this like bunch of like fruits and vegetables, and it looks like they're like coming off of the wall, like they're like falling out, and it looks very realistic. He's like, I think that's the best one we have around here. Like, that's right. It does look like the best one around here because it's the most realistic looking one, and it has the like. And it's like we're surrounded by like Charlie Harper illustrations or like, local illustrators. You're like, oh, this is the best one because it looks real. Like, so I think that's just how
it's the most unstylized one, yeah.
Right. And I think people just, when they don't know how to feel about art and they don't know anything about it, they're just automatically going to default to whatever is going to look the most realistic. That obviously means it's going to be the best looking.
I think people are more likely to see Kubo than they are those other stop motions because those other ones look so weird. Like Paranorman is like, I didn't even want to see that because I was like, ew, they look like they're kind of sticky all the time or something. Like, you know, everything. And Coraline looked creepy in a way that is for like chicks that like creepy stuff kind of people. And that's what we were saying earlier about how those movies kind of appeal to the Nightmare Before Christmas type of people. And Kubo feels much more traditionally stylized. Like this feels like it's so much easier to access for normal people. It looks like a children's book came to life all the time, and that's good.
And I think it's good that it's all stop motion. It doesn't have the Steve Zissou thing where most of the movie is live action and then there's little bouts of stop motion, because I think that weirds people out even more than weird-looking stop motion.
Okay, so my topic as the guest this week is about Soylent, which is a soy-based meal replacement. Like it can be a drink. There's a coffee version. It's traditionally a powder though, and there's a meal bar now, which is apparently kind of new. But it's sort of like it has like sort of a cult following because it basically can replace all of the nutrition for your meals. And while it's not really intended to be like all of your meal replacement, some people are doing that on a trial basis, like for 30 days or for longer. One guy did it for like as long as a year, because you don't have to do shopping or cooking or anything. It's not FDA approved. I feel like I should mention that.
Yeah, this is not an ad or an endorsement or anything like that. Just FYI.
It's not an ad or endorsement. None of us have tried Soylent, I don't think, right?
No, but that would have been a good experiment.
Well, I'm pretty sure it just tastes like oatmeal-y, kind of chocolatey chalk stuff. Like that's
chocolatey chalk stuff.
But it actually depends on the batch, is what I found out. So if you Soylent 1.0 is different from Soylent 2.0, and because there's a coffee version now that tastes like coffee. So what did you all think about that? You all read some of the website stuff, and
it's gluten-free, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty much everything free.
The
Except
only thing
soy.
it's not is soy-free.
So I had a friend in college who got into the Soylent kick there for a little bit, but he was also like a super techie computer science, like try all the newest things. And so for him, this was like another of his fascinating life experiments that he was doing, along with like trying to program for the Oculus Rift and the Apple Watch and like all sorts of other crazy crap. He seemed to enjoy it, but then he would also go out and party on the weekends and also occasionally eat Chipotle. So he wasn't like all in on the Soylent lifestyle. But I like watched him drink this stuff a couple times and I was like, dude, there's no way I'm putting that inside of my body.
Well, it seems ideal for you since you hate everything.
That's not true. We'll talk about me in a minute.
All right. I mean, I think I like food too much because we're asking about how we feel about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really like food, but I mean, if I would have to like run the like test it out to see like how much like time I could save on doing that, and I'm like, if it saves like a little bit of time, I might be into it.
That was the number one most positive reviewed thing about it, is that suddenly you don't have to shop for food ingredients, you don't have to cook anything, and you don't have to spend longer than 5 minutes to make anything.
But Tyler loves burgers.
I do love burgers. It's my favorite animal.
What about you, Sean? What do you feel about Soylent?
As you.
This feels like something I would see on April 1st.
That's interesting.
Because it just... The more that I listen to you guys talk about this, the more how absurd it just sounds to me that, like, first of all, you guys have heard of Soylent Green, right? Like, you know what Soylent Green is.
Soylent Green is people.
Right, just... So, just the idea that somebody would call something Soylent, it just sounds like terrible. It just sounds like repulsive. There was a joke that was made on Futurama where they have something called Soylent Cola, and the joke is, what does it taste like? And the punchline is, it varies person to person. And so every time I see like Soylent anything, I just think like, oh my god, I can't believe we're gonna do this. But like the thing that like really drives me crazy about this is that I feel like people that are on these health kicks are the same people that want to have really good tasting food, right? So this whole idea that you could like bottle an entire nutrition into this, what I'm assuming from the pictures is this like kind of weirdly pornographic thing of this bearded guy who's like pouring Soylent across down his face, is like deeply like weird. And like, look, okay, so go on the website right now. There's this like nice Asian lady, and she's like closing her eyes and taking a Soylent to the mouth. And there's something that's like strangely pornographic about this particular thing.
Oh yeah.
That like, and I don't know. I just feel like cooking does take a long time, but like if somebody came to me and told me that they were doing Soylent, I would be like, is that some kind of cleanse? And if they said no, I would just start laughing at them because
we just found the image of that guy.
Isn't that funny? It just has to be a joke. This cannot be real.
This is, I mean, the thing is, Sean, I know plenty of people who think they are busy enough that they need this in their life. And I say think because I'm not sure that anybody is busy enough that they need to do liquid meals for every meal every day. If you're that busy, you need to realign your life priorities. I'm sorry, that's not okay.
Well, let's do the first question then. How do you feel about the concept of reducing or eliminating food from your daily life?
Ideal.
Terrible.
Okay, so reducing I'm fine with. I did like breakfast replacement smoothies for a while, and that was fine. I mean, it was just like some sort of protein and then milk and fruit. Like, it was basically what I would have eaten for breakfast anyway. But replacing more than one meal a day, I just don't feel like that doesn't sound healthy at all to me.
Why would you ever replace food? I don't understand this. Like, food is one of the few things in my life, including Sarah, that brings joy to me all the time. I am, since I work such a lucrative job right now. One of the things that I like allow myself to spend money on with like without regard is food, because you have to eat, and if and knowing that you have to do this, you should eat things that you like, and you should be conscious of what you put in your body. So like, and I think it's kind of creative for me too, because I don't always have time to like paint and make music and stuff like that, but I do make food a lot. So if I can like find a way to spice up this polenta, or maybe make a new recipe, it's like a really tangible art form that I think we can all get our hands on. So it just feels like it's really it crushes creativity when you say like, I'm gonna drink this white Soylent shake.
Oh.
Sorry, this
is gonna be the fucking cover.
Freudian slip right there, and get it all over my face.
So okay, well, Tyler, do you have anything else to? You would get rid of food if you could.
Yeah, you would get rid of food for this?
Fast, and you don't care.
So here's the issue. Is that I'm hungry all the time. Like, I'm consistently hungry. And it's like, if I could just not for like a solid like 5 or 6 hour chunk, I'd be good. Like,
so Soylent might be ideal for you because you can just drink it instead of eating when you don't feel like it.
That's right.
Well, see, for you, you're just inconvenienced by like that you want to eat all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the reason I sort of thought this would be a good topic, the reason that I personally want to talk about it is because I have kind of a limited diet. Mm-hmm. So, like, Soylent was something I had to consider at one point because it's like I can't eat most of the regular food in the world. It feels like if you go onto a restrictive diet of some kind, like I'm gluten-free and on kind of a low residue diet or whatever you want to call it. But basically that means that all those healthy foods are going to damage me in some way. So like Soylent becomes this thing that is like an option for nutrition. Right. But one thing I love to ask, like, people find out that I'm gluten-free and they're like, oh, I just couldn't do it. And I'm like, yeah, but what if you had to? Like, You wouldn't. Everyone's like, oh, if I couldn't have pizza, I'd kill myself, and I'm like, well, I can't have pizza, so that's great. We're done talking. But yeah, so I thought that Soylent being like this kind of willingly depriving yourself of the pleasure of food was pretty interesting, because a lot of us seem to consider it like really, like Sean was talking about, cooking is like a creative outlet, and food tastes really good because it's supposed to in our human body. So that's why part of the question was, what if you had to drink Soylent instead of eating your normal food, because like normal food was going to destroy you basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think in that scenario, I would still have to like find a way to reconcile. I don't know. Like, it's a good thing there's more than one flavor of Soylent, or they're like moving in that direction. Because if there was only one taste in my life, I would just go crazy. Like, there's got to be a couple different flavors of this stuff. Otherwise, I don't think I could make it.
I can't even eat leftovers 2 days in a row.
Right? I have so much chicken tikka masala right now, and I'm like, I need to get rid of this. It needs to be out of my life.
Listen, sometimes, Catherine sometimes can't have the same food once a week. It's like we had that last week. We can't have that again.
The struggle is real, Catherine. The struggle is real. I respect that. I don't do that stuff.
Although we've now decided that we have to have tacos every week, so at least we've solidified that choice.
Sean, how much polenta have you eaten this week alone?
We just had one tray.
One tray between the two of you.
Yeah.
But how much hummus?
Just one carton. 2 bags.
Like a Costco carton or like a
7 hummuses.
It was technically just one hummus unit.
Extra large hummus unit. That sounds like the way you would order Soylent. Like, yes, hello. I would like extra large unit of Soylent. All right, so I did want to. Would you ever try Soylent? Like, would you?
Sean didn't answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Okay, so let me just start with anybody who has food allergies, or anybody who has like gastrointestinal problems, or and like any kind of digestive problems. I feel terrible for you. My heart goes out to you, because I feel like now too much food is full of preservatives all the time, and it's like food companies, I feel like a lot of them, it's starting to change a little bit more, but not so much, that we, like as long as it is in a box, that in a brand that people recognize, they'll just consume it. I'm sure we'll have a talk about this later, but I feel like caloric density is a terrible way to measure what nutrition looks like. I feel like it just doesn't matter. But we keep using it because for some reason, I don't know why. So I mean, I do feel bad for Soylent, but I feel like when you look at Soylent and you look at their website, their first thing is food, intelligently designed. It is intelligent. It really is. It seems like, the fact, and it's oddly so, that it's called Soylent 2.0. There's something that's super unromantic about this. Like, it's very test tubey. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like my relationship with food is very stereotypically Italian, right? I'm passionate about it. I love it. Like, I crave it. I seek it out all the time. I kind of plan my days around it because I love it. So thinking about this like generic shake is this kind of like it's like a robot hand petting somebody on the head after they come home from work every day. Like, good job, son. You are good at work.
That was an episode of Dexter's Lab, I think. There's a family that just like receives all their nutrients in pill form, which is, of course, like unromantic in every way.
Right. And
Right.
I want passion in my food,
So
Actually, it's interesting because that was like the first thing that attracted me to Soylent as like an option when I really couldn't eat anything, was like you get sick of trying to figure out what you can eat, and you get sick of like extended preparation for stuff
Right.
that's gluten free. So you're like, just put the nutrients in my body. Like, just put them in there. I don't care if it tastes like nothing. You know, I can see why it's so appealing to people in like the tech sector too, because you're like, I don't care about anything except this job and getting it. So.
And that's why I say I feel really bad because like I come from this place of like gastrointestinal privilege, where I can pretty much eat whatever I want, and sometimes I'll make it like intentionally spicy and stuff like that because I just want like a super hardcore flavor. But I mean, that's what I say. I feel compassion for people that can't do that because I want it to change. Like it stinks the way the system is right now. I don't know.
How about you, Tyler? Any thoughts on what if you had to?
I mean, I already got one foot in the door, so I'm not really that upset about it. I mean, I really like smoothies, and I can have them pretty consistently. I mean,
there is a coffee version of Soylent.
Yeah, so see, they're speaking my language, really.
Actually, just as a fun fact, the Soylent, which is of course like it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek for Soylent Green, right? Coffee is also tongue-in-cheek for another sci-fi like nutrient block type of food. So it's a redundant name. I forget. Only sci-fi like nerds that read lots of books will know that.
I see. Yeah.
Right. I would normally, but I didn't read that book.
Oh man.
So all right. Well, I know Tyler would try Soylent.
Oh yeah. I'm in.
I'm out.
The rest of you.
I mean, you can people throw some stuff in it.
They do. They put that's what the subreddit. I shared the link to the subreddit to you all. People talk about their special Soylent formulas and
right.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're gonna add stuff to it and make it into normal food, then you might as well just eat normal food. Exactly. I don't understand.
Well, I don't know. I don't feel like that would always. I don't feel like that would be a thing. Here's what I could. My Soylent hack would be like pouring Soylent on Frosted Flakes and then putting fruit in it or something.
Okay, that's fair. It could be a
to
milk
actually
replacement.
Make a quote-unquote balanced breakfast.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Allegedly, Soylent is like a complete protein, which is what bread and peanut butter is for breakfast. Like, in the sense that that's a complete protein, that it doesn't need to be supplemented by anything else. The one criticism that scientists have had of Soylent is that it's not, like, biologically diverse for our body. So, it's not as good as real food would be.
Right.
So,
a good example of this, when I worked at a summer camp, one day a week they would feed us these things called SuperDonuts. And it was a donut that had one serving of literally every food group in it.
Oh, is this like that stuff they give to prisoners in solitary confinement?
Yes, that's exactly what it's like.
Nutriloaf or whatever that's called?
Yeah, it's like...
That's fascinating to me.
Roughly the same stuff. And just eating it, you can tell that, like, it's nowhere near as good for you as real food. And it just sits in your stomach like a brick. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm imagining Soylent to be like. It's like you drink it, and it just kind of feels like sludge inside of you. And so for that reason alone, I'm so far away from this. No way.
Well, you also had, like, first-hand contact with somebody who did Soylent.
That's true, yeah. And I was not impressed.
I would taste it, especially the coffeeist version. Like, coffee Soylent sounds like either it's the most horrible or it's the best one.
And I think too, as somebody who does endurance sports, if I was doing an endurance sport and I could find something that I could carry with me that would give me like caloric density and nutrition.
Right.
Yeah, I would use it for that. I don't think I would. It's like saying I will not eat power bars and Gatorade for all my meals, but like I would be interested in think about what this could do for like rescue stuff.
That is one of the things that people talk about for Soylent, that it's like a really almost perfect emergency food because it's a powder,
right?
And you can just like give it to people. It's I don't know how much it costs to produce. I didn't really even check how much Soylent costs because it's like I'm sure it's as moderately overpriced as any other kind of health supplement would be, but.
And I don't know who said Soylent isn't romantic or sexy, because there's this lovely couple holding each other on the beach with a Soylent in the hand. They're really having a moment together because
they have so much more time together because they're not cooking together.
That's right.
Time out in nature.
That's right. That woman got out of that kitchen. She's
with my Nalgene full of people.
Oh my God, Tyler. Burning bras and drinking Soylent. Thanks, Soylent. This is terrible.
Fix the Soylent. I could be an individual now.
Take that, patriarchy.
Shackles of cooking. Do you think people would ever accept like a total meal replacement like we see in science fiction? Like I said nutrition cubes. I forget what they're called in FarScape. They have like a cube of food that they just eat because it's cheap all the time instead of having because real food costs a lot of money in the future kind of stuff. Do you think people would ever accept that kind of like nutrient dense, joyless food as something that's cheap and easy, or
does it mean we get to go to space?
I feel like those things are mutually exclusive. Or something.
I think Tyler's right. If space or economic concerns require us to, people will do it. If we are just in the state that we're in now, probably not. But then again, who knows? I mean, the urban meal log has taken off, so...
Wait.
The what?
Chipotle, the urban meal log.
Oh. Now that's interesting. I mean, obviously, if you could make something nutritionally dense taste like something else, then people would be all for it, but... It is a food log, isn't it?
Hey, man, you want to go get some food logs?
As someone who watched FarScape quite a bit in the last couple of years, where they have those kind of like nutrient blocks, I found myself really interested in that, and that's what kind of led me to Soylent. So like for me, I'm like, yeah, if I could just never have to eat again or worry about food allergies, you can sign me up, because I hate trying to like go out to eat and find something gluten-free, and I hate trying to like cook gluten-free all the time, or like, oh, I don't want to have too much onions or whatever. Like, it removes a lot of barriers for people that have allergies, but yeah. I can only see it being popular, if you will, if it were like super cheap, which is the idea in most sci-fi.
I don't want it to come to that, though, because I feel like we already have a similar version of that. Like look at when we talk about restaurants, when we talk about like food deserts and things like that. Yeah. When you go to CVS, which is a grocery store for a lot of people, that's what they're eating. They're eating these like pre-boxed meals and pre-packaged stuff. So like, yeah, I totally see it as the way of the future, but it just makes me sad that like, it's not even so much sad that people aren't in touch with their food or something, but I think that there's something lost in that, or I feel like prepackaged is seen as like, it's not seen as utility, it's seen as like just making do, like.
That's a good point.
Feeding your children macaroni and cheese is, because you're broke, it still allows you to say that you're feeding them food, but it still allows people to say, well, at least you're not starving. When you get in, it just allows for rhetorical traps like that to continue to happen. That like, well, children, as long as they have food, that's what matters. But really, the question that we should be asking is like, what kind of food should we be feeding our children? Like, shouldn't they be getting nutritious meals instead of powdered cheese and like preservative-filled noodles? Not that there's anything like I eat that stuff.
This does remind me that Nutriloaf is something that they're fighting to remove from prisons because it's considered cruel because it tastes so bad. Like, that the price of something being nutritionally dense is that it could taste bad can also be a cruelty, which I found interesting. So, I mean, maybe Soylent is like a personal punishment for some people, but...
It's some kind of weird Catholic guilt atonement.
I mean, I think it's also something to consider, like, well, it's not really, I'm being so fucking stupid, but I'm like, yeah, if it helps us get to space, let's do it. But then I think, like, we think of a really, like, utopian sort of result of that, but it just feels like we would just turn to, like, a District 9 kind of society where it's like, it's actually really shitty.
Yeah, I'm all on board on Team Real Food.
I love real food. I just can't eat most of it.
Hashtag Team Real Food. So I've got our final topic this week, and it's something a little bit more serious than usual for us, but it's something that I really wanted to talk about because I think it's important. And so I want to talk about Twitter, which we talk about a lot, but I want to talk about abuse on Twitter and verification and kind of the baggage that entails. So for those who aren't maybe Twitter users, you probably haven't experienced the horrible, terrible abuse that can happen to people, specifically on Twitter, as opposed to somewhere like Facebook, because on Facebook you have to use your real name or something resembling a real name, whereas you can build a Twitter account in 30 seconds with any kind of ridiculous name you want and pretend to be whoever you want or talk about whoever you want, and everyone sees everything you post because everything is public unless you decide not to. And so in the past couple of weeks, Twitter has finally started making some changes to try and curb some of their abuse, but not nearly the changes that a lot of pundits and tech industry people have been requesting. And so I sent around a podcast link. I will share it down in the description, but we're going to be doing a lot of follow-up based on Accidental Tech Podcast episode 180, Don't Cry for John, Argentina, which is all about Twitter verification and why there seem to be no rules about who gets verified and who doesn't. And around the time that this episode came out, Twitter had introduced some features that gave verified users ways to filter out spam comments that non-verified users didn't have. As we record this, that feature was opened up to everybody like 4 days ago. I've tried it. It's really nice. And I don't even face abuse on Twitter. I just get a lot of spam accounts. But I really wanted to hear some varying perspectives from all of us as heavy Twitter users on abuse and what we think of Twitter as a platform and how they're doing with this. So, have you guys experienced Twitter abuse or Twitter spam?
Not in terms of abuse, but spam. Just constant. Get on there. Squiggly buttons X5 with cleavage wants to follow you. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, great, okay.
I have to say the same. Like, spam accounts, but I don't really post on enough, like, controversial enough tags to get use frequently enough. Like, I play it pretty safe in that regard.
Well, you are a woman on the internet, so you have to do everything safe. The answer to that's no. I don't experience anything. I welcome most people when they want to talk to me on the internet. I haven't had any problems with that.
You don't even get, like, spam @ mentions and spam followers and whatnot?
No, it's actually more on Instagram, surprisingly.
Instagram spam's gotten bad in the past couple months.
Well, Instagram itself has gotten, like, a fucking shithole for, like, a month. Like, here, I always see what's going on Instagram. Oh, all my pictures haven't loaded yet. Why? I really love looking at all these blurry JPEGs. It's great. I love it. I'm glad the stories work, though.
It's true. They're all about them stories.
In there.
So they mention on this ATP episode that these are, people with somewhat of a reputation. And so they talk about imposter accounts, as well as some friends of theirs, including tech journalist Brianna Wu, who was one of the people who was kind of at the center of Gamergate last year. And hearing about all of that and working in the industry, like, Twitter abuse just feels like something that kind of happens in my world. Like, it just feels like an everyday thing. I was curious what y'all's perspective is as kind of like users but not industry insiders on the kinds of abuse that happen on Twitter, both to famous people in general and women particularly.
I mean, yeah, it happens. I think it'd be dumb to deny that it does. Like, I don't know. I wish that Emily was here right now to talk about this.
Yeah, Emily Bamforth was unfortunately unavailable to join us this week, but she did give me some notes, basically echoing a lot of the sentiments that were said on this podcast of Twitter needs to be a lot more transparent about abuse and put in some new measures, and also explain like who gets verified and why, because there seems to be no logic around that right now.
Well, it's probably just, we all know what it is. It's just a cool kids club. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
it's probably just completely based on who people know. I mean, it's like, how do you get most of your jobs? You probably just know somebody, and it's probably the same way. Like, hey, I know a guy at Twitter. Hey, can you make me verified? Yeah, sure, buddy. I know your podcast has got like 500 listeners, but we'll make you verified. No problem.
I mean, I don't know. When we talk about abuse on the internet, it's always weird. Like, it feels like it just grays really quickly. I don't know. I know that sounds really terrible of me to say that, but like, is it abusive if you like? That's why I want to talk to Emily, because I feel like sometimes I'll go to Twitter when I see like this sounds terrible, but like when I watch the Cavs on the playoff, and like one of the announcers just will not say anything nice about the Cavs. Like every time the Cavs aren't doing good, they just go off on how much the Cavs suck. And I'm like, I'll tweet it at ABC or whatever and be like, so just resignedly hate the Cavs? Like, just wish they were all dead or something? And I don't know, is that abuse, or is that just like...
I would consider that more like back-talking and snark than abuse. Abuse is typically more threatening and personally targeting.
Okay, because I don't do that stuff. But I was just, I don't know. It's
abuse typically comes in the forms of like threats and ongoing harassment and things like that. That's the sort of stuff that you saw, like Leslie Jones, who is an actress on SNL we talked about last week about the Olympics, received ridiculous amounts of threats on the weekend that the new Ghostbusters movie premiered.
Yeah.
Seemingly for no reason other than the fact that she was a woman in the all-female cast of Ghostbusters.
Well, that movie had so much, like, fire around it because people didn't know how to handle... Like, people are bad about handling whatever they're a fan of anyway. And Ghostbusters has this cult classic following, and, that's going to create some hesitation and uncomfortableness about any remake they were going to do. But the fact that it was women, and then on top of that, there was a woman of color. I mean, there's a whole discourse for that. I mean, and Twitter kind of enables less of that snark that you see on places like Facebook, where people are like, oh, why did they even do this? And I feel like this is stupid. You can give this long explanation for that. On Twitter, and as always comes up, like, it's so much easier to just be like, you suck, or like, you only have 140 characters to share your displeasure, and you're not going to, like, 1 out of 2, 2 out of 2. Like, no one's going to pay attention to that. So if you're really upset just because something happened, because you're sexist or racist or whatever's wrong with that person, it's easier to just be like, you suck, and I'm going to call you names, and like, whatever your latent problems are more easily expressed in 140 characters than by explaining it.
So I don't want to derail. We can cut this part out, I guess, if it's a terrible question. But does only having 140 characters lend itself to abuse more?
Yes,
absolutely. I think that's a great question, Sean. Particularly when you go into political threads.
No way.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody just laughs. But if you look at #WakeUpAmerica on Twitter,
I don't even gotta type that in.
It's amazing how much vitriol can be spewed in 140 characters, and that's taking out all the characters in #WakeUpAmerica. But because they have fewer characters, they either type shorter, more hateful messages, or they use the image embed feature and overlay text on the image, which is even worse, because then that text is harder to scan by Twitter's, like, algorithm that supposedly filters for hate speech, but doesn't do a very good job of it. Yeah, I would say the 140 characters totally leans itself to abuse and hatred.
Plus, the ease of making an account is there. You can just make an egg account, and it's like, the fact that one of the things we say is like, oh, it's just an egg, you can ignore it. You can practically ignore it because it's somebody who created a throwaway, or like they they want to say something that they know is going to be problematic, right. So they do the traditional internet, like hide behind a username so they can say that.
So that brings us to where we are this particular week here in mid-August 2016, where now anybody can apply to be verified instead of waiting for Twitter to reach out to you. And that kind of begs the question, do any of us want to get verified? Like, are we going to fill out the application? It costs $10.
$10? Fuck it. Why not?
I mean, what are the advantages now?
Get a check mark.
I know, but you can all now we can all do quality filter and whatever, right? Or is that
we can all do quality filter? There's a special verified app where you can. There's like different statistics that you can look at on your account and stuff.
Sure. Analytics and whatever.
Yeah, but I think other than that, they've opened up all the features of verified to the public.
So what's the point of being verified except, like, I can see if you're a personality and you want to make sure that people know that it's you versus someone else. And, like, if you're really building your brand, I can see it being very useful, of course. But as just someone who uses Twitter mostly personally, I don't know if it'd be, like, it's not a priority.
Tyler, you're just going to do it to do it?
I mean, I would just do it, but I'm also, ideally, I'm in it for the long con. Eventually, sooner or later, I'll be popular enough to actually need a verified account.
Well, I mean, you and me talk about, like, if you have kids, do you go get that username for them right now? Like, decide on their name? Maybe you should get that verified, you know, like...
I don't think you can verify an unborn person.
Well, at least save the name.
Yeah, you could save the name for them and then, like making it future-proof, essentially, for you.
That's true.
I think that's the kind of pull for verification for me, is like just proving that it's you. That's really all the checkmark does.
It's like Spencer Reed, fuck. Dan Reed, fuck. Little Stevie Reed, fuck. Xena, the warrior princess Reed. Alright, Catherine gets her kid's name Xena.
Right. I mean, I don't think that that's part of this conversation necessarily, but making.
But it's an interesting point. Sean, are you going after that blue check mark?
Wait a second. So you want me to pay $10 to a social media site that sells my information for money?
Yeah, we get it, Sean.
No, why? No.
I knew you were going to have hater shades for this. I just knew it.
I just don't care about social media websites enough for, you know, like, if you wanna clarify your database, that's your problem. All right, like that's not my.
See, I'm somewhere in between, I think, Sean and Catherine on this one, where I agree with Sean that I don't really want to give them money because I know how much money I'm worth to them. But at the same time, I'm I guess selfishly hoping that someday I'm going to need to be verified for something.
Right.
And so, I mean, because anybody can create an account to impersonate anybody. It's the easiest way to steal somebody's identity now is to just rip down their profile picture and make a Twitter account with the same profile picture, and then people get confused about which one's the real one, and you can say mean, hurtful shit. So if that starts happening, like, if for whatever reason somebody decides to do that to me, I'm immediately going to get verified. Because I work in an industry where, like, my public persona is constantly being judged, and so I would want to be able to say definitively, like, no, that is an impersonator, that is not me. But I'm not going to do it now. Like, there's no reason, there's no incentive, I don't get any benefits, and I'm not facing any sort of, like, impersonation or abuse, so it's kind of lost all of its value all of a sudden, whereas 3 years ago I would have been all about it.
Like, the fact that they just now made these tools available to everybody is kind of annoying, because it makes me wonder, like, what would possess you to think that this would not be useful for all of your users versus verified? Like, I understand that they would need additional tools, but the two that they released don't feel like something that would be exclusive to, like, being popular, you know, or, you know what I mean? Like, I kind of understand quality posts, but, like, just wanting to see stuff from people you already follow seems like an obvious one from the beginning.
Yeah, that was the one that really tripped me up. Like, why wasn't that already a feature?
I thought, like, I would have thought it was if I didn't know better.
So, this kind of brings us to this larger question that everybody's asking all over Medium and on podcasts this week, which is the idea of a completely open Twitter still relevant in 2016? Like, is that still a good idea? Or is that some kind of overrated pipe dream?
So what does that mean exactly?
It's the pre-verification Twitter. The only thing you have to base it on is their profile picture and their name, and you can potentially reach out to anybody in the world, and they'll get a notification if you tweet at them.
Oh, right, as opposed to, like, a Facebook situation.
Exactly.
I mean, I feel like there needs to be at least one. I mean, if one closes, another one's going to open up, because I think there's a real desire for people to connect with other people in, like, a very open environment. So
you're thinking that if Twitter closes itself off, somebody will just make a Twitter clone that does the same thing?
Yeah.
Or another social media website will have, like, a more open strategy as a response. Like, because I don't think something would pop up as a response to Twitter. Like, there's no way you could take it on. There's no way you could take on Twitter. Something amazing would have to happen to be better than that. Which is kind of like...
Or they could go bankrupt, which is a real possibility.
Yeah. Something major would have to happen, I think. But, I don't know. I feel like open Twitter, I just don't... Maybe I'm not, like, a Twitter junkie necessarily, but I don't feel like it would be that much different. It would just be a bigger pain in the ass to be one of those people that has a lot of followers to manage, because you would have less tools by which to do so. That's it. You'd have to have someone manage it. Like, or something else you could see with an open Twitter is more tools, like add-ons and stuff like that, to help you manage it and to help you, like, block people or, like, curate your feed, that kind of stuff.
More of a third-party solution.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we already see that with Tumblr. Tumblr doesn't give you the tools to, like, block tags or, like, block whatever, you know. So people have a lot of third-party things like xKit that give you more accessibility and, like, more ability to block certain tags, or, like, Tumblr Savior, you know. That kind of stuff exists because Tumblr doesn't give us the tools to curate well enough, in some people's opinion.
You know, my old answer that it just doesn't matter.
But I think it does matter. I think it matters deeply to, like, millions of people.
And the quicker that we realize that we cannot depend on social media to know anything about anybody, the quicker we can just move on with our lives. I mean, of course you can't walk back going on, you know, Make America Great Again, say dumb racist shit about Obama, and then pretend like you're a different person in meat space. But realistically, like, there's plausible deniability there in saying, I didn't post that.
I don't feel like that's any different than it's ever been, though. Like, people had pen names back
exactly.
when... I mean, like, we don't even know if Bill Shakespeare ever existed because of that. Like, we don't know if that was a real person. I know that sounds like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, but you could pull that off today. I mean,
right.
You could have a group of writers that all function under a pen name, and there's even, like, a social media account for that. And there's no discernible difference between that imaginary person and, like, a real person, as far as the internet's concerned, as far as, like, what people think is concerned.
So I can't believe I'm going to go in this direction, but this week on the meme review, Anthony Fantano talked about the I'm Rick Harrison and this is my pawn shop copy pasta. And he mentioned that with some older copy pastas, for those who don't know, is a block of text that you take from somewhere and paste somewhere else, usually over and over again. Some of these older ones weren't from celebrities, they were just from random people. And if you weren't familiar with, like, 4chan and Reddit, you could read that and assume that it's the original person. And then you start having a dialogue with a person who isn't even there. You're just talking to a meme.
Yeah.
And I think Catherine's right. Like, in some ways, this is, you know, pen names for authors all the way back to, like, the 15th, 16th century. Like, you know, we really can't pretend to know unless the person's right in front of us.
Which I don't think is, like, necessarily a bad thing. I think it opens up that kind of weird, like, proto-dystopian, utopian kind of, like, you can be whoever you want on the internet type of thing, and, like, you can reinvent yourself, and that maybe is the more of the truer answer. Not to get too, like, philosophical, but, you know, I think what's interesting about Twitter abuse is that it is probably more honest about how those people feel than they would be in Meat Space, even though it's cruder and like maybe a little exaggerated. It's probably the most emotional response you would get. Because if they made an egg to talk about it, obviously they, like, you know...
They feel pretty passionately.
Yeah.
They feel passionately enough to set up a Gmail account and set up a Twitter account.
Yeah.
It takes, like, 10 whole minutes of work. Well, I think this was an interesting discussion, and I'm glad that people all over the internet are having discussions like this week, because I do think that this is a valuable discussion for all of us to have, and to be informed participants in our networks. And so if people want to continue this discussion on Twitter or somewhere else, if that feels more appropriate, you know how to get a hold of us. Alright, and now it's time to wrap the show up like we always do with a round of shameless plugs from our panel. We're going to start this week, as always, with Tyler McRib Reed. Tyler, what would you like the people to do this week?
Hey everybody, you can find my work at tylerdreed.com. Let's get some design going. Let's make some logos. I got a 1-cent tip on Friday, so need to recover from that shit show. You can find me on social media as TDR Design on Instagram and Twitter. You can also follow my other job, the Roko TR, on Twitter.
Fair enough. Sean, the Talent Evans, what would you like the people to do this week?
You guys can check me out on Twitter if you want to. It's sevans8910. Sevens8910. Check me out. Other than that, see you next week, kids. Glad to be back.
Catherine, thanks for joining us this week. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, of course. I'm so used to being on, like, in the background noise of all the...
It's nice to actually hear your voice.
Voice in the background. That's probably me.
Well, where can the people find you?
They can find me at catherinedmartino.com. That's my web portfolio. And on the socials, I do have a pretty newly christened, if you will, Twitch channel where I do some art streaming, and that's at /excellent, twitch.tv/excellent with an I. And that's also my Instagram. And then on Twitter, unfortunately, my name's a little different. It's at ixelcoatl. So that's all. If you find one of the socials, you find all of them pretty much.
And there will be links down in the show notes, as always. Well, and you can follow me on Twitter at TC Olmstead. You can follow the show and like the show on Facebook and Twitter. And we are getting ready to launch the second season of Forced Fandom, the podcast where I talk to people about stuff that they like. Emily Bamforth is making me watch The Gilmore Girls, and I have no idea how to feel about it. So check that out. And otherwise, we will be back next week with more brunch.
Kitty.
Relax, cat.
Look, there's another teacher.
Oh. Poor sweetie.
Now that I have a minute and a half of tape of you guys cooing your cats...
Doggo.
Look at his face.